Jack, I'm excited to have you here to have this conversation. This is just a unique, not podcast specifically, but just a conversation I thought it was important to have for our EXP agents. I've been licensed a very long time. I got licensed in 2002. I became an agent, then I became a team leader. I owned part of a franchise. And I remember when your danger report came out, it was very disruptive. I didn't understand why. I know the people who owned my franchise and all of the leaders I look up to were quite thrown for a loop in the sense of, what the report had in it and how it would affect the industry. And so it's been full circle for me, even being able to have part of the conversation with you guys as you guys look at the opportunity that lies ahead of us. But I thought it was so important and impactful that I wanted you to come on here with me, have a conversation that we could then share out with our agents and kind of talk through what are the opportunities they should be thinking about.
Yeah, well, thank you, Leo, and I'm really delighted to be here with the EXP audience. And as you know, we've been friends of EXP for well over a decade. Stefan was involved in writing the original business plans with Glenn, and so we're just such a fan of what the company has grown into and how much opportunity it has created. No pun intended for or pun intended for agents in the real estate industry. So. We have a report that I want to put in context for everybody. And you mentioned the danger report. So I thought let's start there. And then there's a bunch of specific things in here that I think that if you're a practitioner, if you're leading a real estate team, or if you're ambitious about being in the industry long term, this is, I think, an essential set of reading for you and something that you can use not just today, not just for the next month or two, but can be guidance for the next few years, because as we saw with the danger report, a lot of what was in it we wrote 10 years ago, and much of it reads very current even today. So that's what I was hoping to bring to this audience today is that conversation. So, but let me start with the danger report. Those that are newer into the industry, in 2014, the National Association of Realtors asked my partner Stefan Swanepoel to write a report about the dangers and risks of the industry. And both our company comes from a deep background of residential real estate. I have a similar career as you. I've worked for a national company. I've run local brokerages. I've owned franchises. And then my partner, Stefan, has done that many times over. And we have about 40 people that work here that all have that kind of like love and passion for the industry. So it's not unusual that NAR would come to us and say, hey, can you analyze our industry and help us figure out where we're going and what the risks are. And so they came to us in 2014. My partner Stefan spent a year and he went and visited 50 CEOs in their offices of large real estate companies, large associations, MLSs, technology companies, anybody that he felt had a particular insight into the industry, and interviewed them. We also did some focus groups. We did some survey work for the danger report. And so the report we issued in 2015 was a synthesis of what really smart people were thinking about the industry at the time. And like, what are the risks? What are the challenges? What are some of the things that are going to come down that we need to be watching out for? So that's all to put in context. The report we've just released now, which is the opportunity report, we released in October. It's had a ton of activity, downloads, a bunch of articles. I think Real Estate News has written about it, and the news has written about it. So a lot of people getting a copy of it. And there's some reasons why. We looked at the danger report from 10 years ago, and we asked ChatGPT to do an analysis of our report. And it named a number of things. There's about 25, 30 different changes that it anticipated would happen in the industry that were risks. And it was everything from commission compression to regulatory interference in the industry to the continued rotating cycle of agents that aren't quite good enough to make it in the industry, rotating in and out, how that created risk to the industry. So it analyzed our report from 10 years ago on all the different things that we said, hey, these are risks. These things may happen to the industry and may be negative. And we asked it to score them on a scale of 1 to 100 as to accuracy. So just like a test, just like in school, give us a grade. And so it gave the report an 83% grade overall for what was in the danger report. And then it specifically scored every single thing that we had called out in that report. And there were several that were 100% or 90%. New business models. One of the things that we called out in the danger report was that new business models, such as EXP, would take hold over the next decade. And that's been clearly proven out, not just by you guys. Half of the top 20 brokerages that are in the industry today are companies that didn't exist 20 years ago, and many of whom were started in the last 10 to 15 years, including EXP and some other companies. So the point is, we wrote this document 10 years ago. Today, if you score it, it scores an 83% accuracy. And we're just now have produced a new document that says, here's what we think is going to happen for the next 10 years based on interviewing. We followed the exact same process this time. We interviewed about 50 top leaders in real estate companies, including you, Leo. You're in there. You're in the report. So you're one of the people we talked to, and a number of your peers that are running, new companies, new styles of companies. So we got some of the best new thinking about where the industry's going, and have poured it into this report. The report is in several sections, and what I want to talk about today are some of the opportunities for agents. And those of you that are going to be here for the long term and want to really invest and grow your career and your business, I think we'll have some great conversation for today. So that's a little bit of the background, a little bit of the why. If you had a document you knew was going to be 83% accurate in 10 years, would you bet money and time on it? You probably would. I know I would.
Yeah, those are good odds. So let's jump right into that first section.
Great. So we have 4 sections. The first is for agents and brokers. The other sections, we've got a second section, organized real estate, less interesting for this group, but also maybe a little more controversial. And then one for state regulators and one sort of for everybody. So we're going to talk about agents and brokers today, and where we see the opportunities for the average listener on the call. I'm not going to go through all the opportunities. There's a lot of them in there. Really, what you do is just go download the report and just read it. It won't take you a long time. It's not super dense. It's not like a textbook. It's designed to be consumed in probably about 40 minutes. I understood that you had one of your agents take ChatGPT and turn it into a short audio book read by Dr. Dre or Snoop Dogg or somebody like that. That's pretty good. So you could do that. That's a choice. You could totally do that. So the first section is all for agents and brokers. Some of it will apply to some of you more than others, especially if you're running a team or you're looking to build one. There's some pieces in here that are big. So the first opportunity is all about this change we've just experienced, which, Leo, you've done a phenomenal job leading on and leading your organization in, which is this decoupling of buyer and seller agent compensation, which I know you've been very vocal about. There's a few other leaders in the industry who've been vocal about having buyer representation and buyer services really stand on their own 2 feet, via their own merits, have their own agreements, have their own services and fees and all of that. So we believe that is one of the opportunities for agents and brokers today, because many of your peers are not going to figure this stuff out. They're going to keep trying to do it the old way. They're going to keep asking the listing agent how much compensation is being offered, instead of going and discussing with their client, here's the cost of my services, and here's all the things I'm going to do for you, and here's what I charge, and getting that agreement up front. We know there's still a lot of agents that are going to struggle with that, which the opportunity is becoming very good at getting those kinds of agreements. And I know that you agree in principle, Leo, but I'd be interested to hear your thinking on that.
I look, one of the things that I've been very loud about is, we didn't ask for this, right? This was this evolution of our industry was very non-natural, right? It was an outside force that, as best put, I don't think really understood the mechanics of what we do, and it was very arbitrary. It was like, hey, it's on a Saturday in August, right? And oh, by the way, here are a couple of ideas, but there's really no clear black and white definitions. Right. So I think that's what the catalyst that threw in the most confusion, because now we've let states and associations and MLSs down to, and at the state level, you have the DREs, right? The actual departments of real estate, versus like the state associations that are very different than the MLSs themselves. So there's lots of cooks in the kitchen right now. And we were left with a decision over the summer, say, do we let these committees decide our future, or do we have to jump in and kind of make a national decision that protects our agents the most, while creating as much clarity as possible for consumers, right? Because the part that I keep talking about is, we kind of get lost in our own inside baseball of jargon and terminology. But at the end of the day, when that young family has, 60 days to find a new home before renewing a lease, and they got a baby on the way and they need more space, I don't think they really care about these agreements and whether this is signed here or there. It's like, hey, let's best explain to the consumer what their options are, so they have all the information to make the right decisions, not create liability for themselves or others, and just render the best, fiduciary responsibility we can. And so that's kind of when we sat down midsummer with a blank sheet of paper and said, all right, let's create some buyer representation agreements. Let's make them 1 day. Let's make them 1 hour. They can be a single property to a single week, right? We created this opportunity to have that representation almost be on a spectrum, in the sense of, is there a get to know you period before you enter a long-term agreement? If these are the rules of engagement that we have to deal with, then let's create documents that are simple to understand, that you can read in a driveway, that you don't need a JD for, and maneuver the best we can through this. And even down to last week, when we got the final ruling, we had the DOJ stirring the pot at the 11th hour, which I did not appreciate. Right? Let's get some clarity. Let's move forward. And if you have opinions, put them in writing, and let's make it clear, so we can build SOPs and train our people properly.
Yeah. So this is a really good example where EXP as a company is already in one of the first opportunities in the report, and it is executing. And so I think that just, being part of that, again, I think agents here have a leg up, because you've got the support of an organization that's like, hey, we're going to help you figure this out. We're going to help you make it easy for your customer, your consumer, your client to understand what's going on. And so that's a principal opportunity for us to master and just get better at it as an industry. So that's opportunity one. That one, I feel like, is probably going to be, we put it in as our first opportunity. We're probably not going to be talking about it in 2 or 3 years, because it'll just be the way business is done, and we'll have moved on to other issues, other items.
No, completely agree. I keep telling people, it's like, look, it'll feel eventually like when we talked about wiping our groceries down during COVID, right? In the retrospect, it looks silly, but it was very real a couple of years ago, right? So this messy middle, which it almost feels like we're almost on the way out. Although, I get surprised almost every Monday for some reason. That's when everyone's amnesia kicks in. In some state or jurisdiction where we get a surprise, but for the most part, I've even seen this march towards, even at the state levels or association levels, where they're completely decoupling compensation, and broker to brokers just disappearing altogether, right? Which is what I said in midsummer, that would be my guess 12, 18 months out, right? That collectively as a country, we just stop doing it.
Yep. Absolutely. So that leads us, the second opportunity we have in the report is about best practices for buyer services, because if you're going to do what we just talked about, which is the decoupling and the agreements and things like that, then you have to establish, okay, what are your best, and this is, as an agent, you do this, as a team, you do this, as a company, you do this, to say, what are the best practices for how we offer buyer services, and how do we structure them, how do we talk about them, how do we put those in place? Because those that I believe, and I'm confident, Leo, you believe, that the buyer's agents provide tons of value, and it's really about, how do you express it, how do you package it, how do you make sure that the consumer understands it, and that's best practice. We haven't done it. We've done a lot of that on the listing side in this industry for years and years and years, and we're now had to press fast forward on doing it on the buyer side. And so again, it's tied with the first opportunity, but it's definitely a similar flavor of thing about best practice with buyers.
No, I couldn't agree more. That's one of the things I talk about. I think for years we were all trained as very good listing agents, in the sense of, hey, I know my days on market, I know my list to sell ratio, I know my conversion ratios, I know all these things. But I don't think as buyer's agents, and I never did it for the 16 years I sold, I didn't know out of multiple contract situations how many % of the time I won. I didn't know my list to buy discount. I didn't know what the average concessions I got for buyers. And these are all things that I'm now talking about, right?
Yeah.
And so it's very important that we shift the conversation. Not that I expect you to track all the stuff we release, but at EXPCon, we released a pro version of Canva for every single agent. And one of the reasons we did that for the agents listening is we're now building as much collateral and presentations for you guys that you can then make your own and make them adjust them to make them specific to your market and your branding. But that's one of the thought processes. We want to give you the buyer presentations. We want to give you the best practices and tools so you can hone your skill sets and again, in fairness, I don't think anyone had that muscle developed. It was not something we were all used to doing, but I actually have a t-shirt that I almost grabbed this morning when I put this EXP shirt on, but it says, treat your buyers like you treat your sellers. Right? Assume every consultation is a competitive presentation where you have to articulate the service you're willing to render for the fee you're willing to accept. And that's what we did as listing agents. But for the most part, we were never forced into that situation as a buyer's agent before.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a beautiful segue to the third opportunity in the report, which is about enhancing credibility with the consumer. And because what we've seen, I know Leo, you've seen it, we've certainly seen it. We have had 2.5, 3 years of some of the worst media about our industry, where large media companies have had articles and stories about how terrible real estate agents are and how much they charge and all this negativity. And it's been an unbalanced and in some cases inaccurate or false narrative about the industry. And so part of what we need to do now is tell our stories. And one way of telling your stories is exactly that. Hey, we save consumers this much money. We do these kinds of negotiations that get people what they want. These are some stats and facts and things like that back up the value of buyer services. I personally believe that the buyer's agent in the U.S. system saves their clients tons of money because they know what to ask for. They know how to negotiate. They know what repairs to ask for. They know what all that is. And people like to look at Europe. They like to look at all these other systems and say, oh, well, they just charge, it's only 1% or 1.5%. I was like, well, there's a cost to the repair you didn't negotiate. There's a cost to the inspection you didn't know to do. There's a cost to the thing that you could have negotiated that you didn't know you could. And those are real costs. They're not reflected comparatively between the U.S. system, the American system, and Europe or Australia or just about anywhere else. So I think but we have to rebuild that credibility by telling those stories, by having that kind of information for the consumer so they can see that what we do is highly valuable. And I believe it is. I know it is. I've done the job. I know, Leo, you've done the job.
Well, a couple of things to add there that I'm quite passionate about since we have the vantage point. One is, there's only probably 2 countries, not because people like to say Europe on the whole, but it's only the UK, because most of continental Europe, Spain, Portugal, France, Germany, we're talking, it's very much in line with the North American percentages of 5 or 6%. And then in the countries like the UK and Australia that have that 1.5, 2% that is quoted in the media quite a bit, people forget that those portal countries, right, where there is no MLS infrastructure, sellers are paying upfront to the portals for premium advertising at the tune of $5,000 upfront, whether the house sells or not, for these premium packages, which is what the portals would prefer to see here happen, right? Where there's this bifurcation and this kind of toll booth that gets added to. And so I think there's not enough reporting and conversation around that, even in those countries that have lower averages, when you add the full cost of sale, it ends up being very similar or even more expensive. And I can't quote the report that I saw it on, but I want to say it was at a national event where someone from stage said something to the tune of, out of the G7, we're still like the second cheapest, right? So when you look at the full cost that gets baked into the cost of sale, it's just we're looking at it typically from the net HUD-1 versus out-of-pocket expenses that are paid up front and non-refundable in the case.
That's a very different expense. If they have to write a check on the front end, that means the consumer's taking all this risk, and it doesn't guarantee a sale. So it's very different.
And two more points there, and sorry, before we move forward. One is when you were talking about the buyer report, I think James Dwiggin's new company Raise did that survey where buyers were asked how many hours they thought the agent spend on that consumer's transaction. And I think the response was about 15 hours, right? Versus what NAR says, which is 80 to 100 hours. And, I hear the number 87 thrown around quite a bit. But think of that disconnect of what it takes to actually help a buyer buy a home versus what the consumer actually thinks is invested from the agent standpoint from a time. And when you look at listings, the NAR stat I've heard most commonly thrown around is 30 hours. So if you think about it, it's almost 3 times the amount of effort to represent the buyer than it does to represent the seller. And so in no way can you say that, it's less effort. It's completely the opposite of what I think either consumers expect or what's talked about in the mainstream media.
Yeah, totally accurate. And the thing that we need to do is put that in front of the consumer more because they're not aware of it. And I feel like, and this is a good transition for the next opportunity in the report, which is about having a different role and really viewing as an agent that your role isn't a salesperson. And part of being in professional services or consulting, that's my business. I moved into consulting, well over a decade ago. And a lot of what we do is just explain what we do and describe people. Here's all the things that we're going to do that you probably don't want to do, or you're not qualified to do, or you don't have the tools and systems to go do efficiently and effectively. Right? And that's really the role that agents are in, whether they recognize it or not. I think a lot of agents think of themselves as salespeople, and yet they do. They're talking to people through buying the wrong house. They're saying, "Hey, here's all these reasons why that's not a great house for you." They're consulting them on neighborhoods, on schools. They're talking to people about where do you want to be in 10 years? And here's financially how this decision is going to impact you. And then they're doing all these things to get a contract to close. They're solving problems. They're negotiating. They're doing all these things that are well beyond. If you're just a salesperson, you're just responsible for getting the contract. You get the contract done and your job is done. That's what a salesperson does. What real estate professionals do is a lot more, but I think they still, and in this industry, a lot of people still think of themselves principally as salespeople, when it really, that part of it is maybe 10% of their job. And the 90% is everything that you do. And I know they do it. I had people work for me. You've got tons of people working for you. You see all this stuff they do. So that's the other one that's a big opportunity, is elevating the role, thinking about your role as a consultant, as an advisor, as something. You're not just a salesperson, because you aren't.
No, I prescribe to that as an agent, and the benefit of being a high producing agent was you didn't have what I called commission breath, right? If you actually did it professionally, it did not matter if that one transaction closed or it didn't. Thankfully, you could provide for your family, and I think that once you get to that level of production, it's easier to shift into that very consultative, like, hey, whether you buy this house or you don't buy one at all, and I talk you out of it for all the right reasons. In the long term, what I always felt and found was that it was a high level of trust. So if they didn't end up buying, they definitely referred me to people that they trusted in their world.
Yeah, and it's that professional attitude about this is a long term. And again, for people that are going to be in the industry long term, it is the right thing to do to make that call, to say, look, I'm not going to try to get somebody to buy something today. I'm more about that long-term relationship, for the exact reason you said, which is they're going to give you referrals. They're going to talk to their friends. They're going to list their home in 10 or 12 years when they need to move again. And if you're still around, you want them to list with you. And so but it takes that perspective of, thinking more like an accountant or an attorney or a professional engineer, or somebody that is really about the result and just not about the sale. The sale will come. I found if you're high level consultative with people and you help them move towards what they want, the sale comes, and it'll be a good sale, and one that leads to a referral and a positive experience every time. So that's the right way.
Absolutely.
So I've got there's a fun opportunity in the report, which is, I want to put this one in context, because I believe, Leo, we are at such a time of transformation and change in our industry, between the unbelievable, low unit sales, meaning we're on a very low oxygen environment right now. It's like the great financial crisis. Plus, we have all these practice changes that have hit at the same time. Plus, we have the artificial intelligence revolution that just showed up on our doorstep maybe a year and a half, 2 years ago, where now artificial intelligence is now being built into more tools. It's accessible. You can go out and you can log in and get stuff today. All of those things, I believe now is a time of bigger change than any in the industry before it, because of those three things all happening at the same time. Any one of them would have been remarkable, but to have them all three at the same time, and I think, again, this is my personal opinion, it's not in the report, my personal opinion is that the AI revolution will end up being more significant than the personal computing revolution we had in the 80s, where we went from computers were a thing that only lived in big labs or down at the universities, so like now they're in your pocket. And I think AI is that big of a potential change in the capability of human beings to do things. Like we just now can do a lot. I can edit video now. I can write, books now with AI. I can make changes to photography. I can do, like, there's so many capabilities that are right in your web browser that you used to have a lot of skill to do. And now I have an AI that can at least get it to a version that I can work with and then give and do feedback. So that's one of the big opportunities, is leveraging artificial intelligence into what you're doing. I know Canva, the tool that you're now providing for everybody, part of that, which is a very popular, great tool, is doing some AI stuff. I know a lot of the real estate tools are having artificial intelligence built in, but EXP being so tech forward, talk to me about what you think about artificial intelligence and how.
Yeah, no, it's a very important topic in general, as how it's going to affect society. And it's interesting the level of effect that people think it will have versus others. I've heard it's fire, and I think that's a little bit much. But I've lived through two really huge advancements as a real estate professional. One is high-speed internet, and then followed by mobile, right? And depending on when people got licensed, I actually had to drive into the office because I did not have high-speed internet at the house. That was pre high-speed internet at the house. We had dial-up, and you would go to the office to log into that portal that looked like this. I don't even remember the name before Matrix came out, and we'd print out reports, and then I'd leave voicemails on landlines, and I'd have to schedule showings. Then I would have to get a call back. Then I would have to call a consumer on the landline. Then I would have to schedule the showing. And like the fastest I could find a property, present an offer, and get it in front of a consumer, it could be a 1 to 2 weeks, right? And then high-speed internet came out, and then right after it, the phone came out in my pocket. And now a property can hit the MLS, be syndicated to every major portal, create a notification inside my customer's app, whether it's Zillow or Redfin or Zenlist or an internal app. And we could schedule that showing through Showing Time seamlessly. And then I can be at that property, open the door, and then write the offer on Dotloop or SkySlope or any of the form writing platforms from my phone. And you can virtually get offers within hours, right? I don't think people appreciate the acceleration of time. And that's exactly what I think AI is going to do, right? So I actually heard a Gary Vee video over the weekend when I was flying home from the holiday. And he said something in there that kind of hit me like a ton of bricks, which is, in 2 to 3 years, we won't search on Google anymore. Think about that concept, right?
Yeah.
And as a sample size of one, I'm like, that hit me really hard because I primarily probably search on chat, YouTube, and probably Instagram, right? And again, that's slightly different. There's probably 7 or 8 dominant global platforms between Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Snapchat, and the age, Twitter, LinkedIn. And again, depending on your demographic and kind of your focus, whether it's professional, it's probably more LinkedIn and Twitter. Millennial, I think it's Instagram. Age up a little bit, it's Facebook. But we're going more towards this different way of consuming information. And so AI is the thing powering all those algorithms, right? So when you talk about the things we're not seeing, how social and that content was being delivered for the first 10 years was basically based on like who you are as a influencer and like the content you put out. But there is now AI powering the algorithms for search, where if you deliver one great piece of content on social, it can go viral. And it doesn't matter how many followers you have. So I think this next chapter for professionals who actually are experts and can deliver a value is going to be exponential. So, you can now be a media company of one with the phone in your pocket. But like you said, like I'm a pretty decent speaker. I'm very comfortable verbally, but if you've ever gotten an email or text from me, sometimes it doesn't make a lot of sense because I'm pretty sure I was dyslexic and no one diagnosed me in the 80s because we didn't have terms for everything back then. But ChatGPT's made me a really prolific writer now, right? I can actually feel very confident in turning what I say verbally and turning it into a post or an article or an email or an op-ed. I would have never done that prior to having this tool that's basically my co-pilot. In like, I write my stuff, but then I can say, hey, I want this tone for an op-ed versus an Instagram post. and it completely changes tonality to verbiage to the spelling and the grammar and using emojis versus punctuation. So the simple answer is Jack, is I think the people who will embrace AI will outperform and put the people that don't out of business.
Yep.
Which is the same how I felt about the internet, which is the same I felt about mobile, and it's the same that happened with personal computing, right? So
Yep.
it's the folks that embrace the change. The short term that comes to mind when I think of AI is faster, stronger, better, right? Like you have this the power of human consciousness in your pocket that you can have be your editor, your advisor, your augmentation. But I think the people who really embrace it and hold on to it will just outperform the folks that don't.
And I absolutely, we're on the same page with all of that. I also think that AI will be the salvation of what has been at this point an entirely failed type of technology in our industry, which is CRM. Most agents, and I've worked with tons of them, we're not great at maintaining our database. You know, there's some of you that are, and God bless you. You're really good at that. But most agents are not great at that. They're not great at keeping it up to date. They're not great at putting notes in it. They're not great at that. And some of the tech that I'm seeing now, it's like, oh, well, I have an assistant it's a digital assistant whose job is maintaining my database and letting me know what's going on in it and saying like, hey, this person is about to have a house anniversary and they've been in the house for 8 or 9 years. Be a great time to give them a call, right? And those kinds of things that you would, if you could say, I would be more professional if I did that, you'd want to do it. It's just hard for us to do it. Humans are not good with, we're not good. I've learned, I came from an engineering background for real estate. And what I've learned is most humans are not good at those machine things that handle data. We're just not, some of us have skills and can do it, but most people are bad at it. And I think that this AI and technology is going to give us the promise of the smart CRM that keeps us in touch with our clients, which we know is where the majority of our business comes from. That's just what it is. Any professional that's been in this for a little while knows that. So I think it's a huge opportunity. And EXP is investing in some tools. You guys have relationships with some companies that I know have already made big investments in artificial intelligence and will continue to do that. So that's one of the great things is you have EXP has been a technology leader since very early in its inception, and that's a powerful asset to the listener of this podcast.
No, and I will add that there's probably more going on in the parts you can't see of the business, right? And how we review files and how we process and look at the lens of the transaction from just how much friction there is and how much duplication there is in input. So we're spending a lot of time in that side of it. I don't know if you know, but we hosted a hackathon in partnership with OpenAI at EXPCon in Miami, and we had teams competing.
Very
and
cool.
yeah, we had prize money, and the judges were EXP leadership as well as OpenAI leadership. And it's just so fascinating to see, the different applications that the winner actually was taking GDPR and US do not call information, and being able to process real-time information as to how you should interact with data in certain jurisdictions, right? So there's just so many different applications that we're at the beginning of this. And one of the last points before you're going to move on that I'll make that I've seen about transformative kind of advancements in technology is they are less impactful than you think at the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
And they're substantially more impactful than you think in the long run. And like the best example I have is, is this thing.
Oh my gosh.
And I just got the 16, so I know exactly which version we're on. But one was basically a toy. It was just a cute kind of iPod phone. But I remember thinking and talking, because I grew up in DC, like grownups use Blackberries, like that's the business person phone. And the first iPhone was basically just an iPod that made phone calls and did text messages, but it wasn't the same because it didn't have the tactile keyboard that the BlackBerry had. But today, this is almost barely a phone, right? It's the keys to my Tesla. It's my wallet. My daughter has the flu, and my health insurance card is now digital. in there, in addition to my credit card, in addition to like, I guarantee you we will have legal USA issued digital driver's licenses that will, replace the one that I need to get onto a plane at the airplane before we know it, right? So this thing is barely a phone anymore, but that's how it came out. It's still called a smartphone, but that's almost the reason we don't use them, right?
Yeah.
We said put a voicemail that said text me.
Yeah, it's now you do maybe 5% is phone usage and 95% is running your entire life from your phone, which I know there are some agents out there, they do all their business on the phone. They do everything.
I refer to it as a remote control to our lives, right? So that I think that's very analogous to what I think is going to happen with AI, right? Right now, there's really cool applications that we use every single day, that different use cases, but how it functions 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 16 years from today, because like we're basically still in like V1 of large language models, right? They just came out.
Yeah. Where I tell people this is the worst it's ever going to be right now. It's pretty good right now. It can do a lot. It's only going to get more and more capable. And so I just pulled up our stats from sales production of the US market last year. So the average agent that is in the top 1,000 brokerages last year sold 5.8 homes. And there's a span. There's obviously a range. There's people that sell 20 homes a year, 25, but there's a span. But the average is 5.8. With AI assistance, I believe that number could double. Like you could do way more transactions because you're not caught up in the minutia. You're not having to manage every step of every process. You're not having to do all the little things that people forget they do in order to do their business today, because the AI will do it for you. And I've seen demos of AI assistants that have done exactly that. Hey, reminders. I'm setting an appointment for you. I'm going to reach out to the client on your behalf and schedule for the meetings and things like that we spend all this inordinate time doing today. So I think we're going to see. I think we'll be able to see a productivity impact in 5 years from AI. And it may not be double, but we'll see it. And I think in 10 years.
That's a good kind of curiosity point I have, because we play a finite game instead of an exponential game here, both by agent count and transaction count. So,
Absolutely.
So are you saying that agents get cut in half? Like where does that doubling effect come from?
Where I think that happens is that the agents that adopt the technology and are using it to become more productive will just take market share over time. And we're saying, by the way, this trend we're already seeing in the top 1,000 brokerages. So if you look 6 years ago, the top 1,000 brokerages did about 48% of all the sales volume in the US. It's about 48%. Last year, it was 61%. So it's gained over 10% in that 6 period. And what that is this transaction consolidation. Unit volume is similar. It's not quite as high. It's about 8 or 9%. So we're seeing that brokerages that are becoming more highly productive in that top 1,000 brokerages. And it's faster. If you look in the top 20 brokerages, those are ones that the consolidation of sales volume and unit count is actually happening faster in the largest brokerages. And what that is it's efficiency, it's better tools, and it's agents that are more professional and are more committed to this. And I think that AI is going to enable that. So really, it's just going to eliminate. We're going to have less agents that are doing a low volume of transactions, and we're going to be able to shift the bell curve over. So where we'll have more agents that are able to do more because of the technology. And it does mean some people will get out. It means some people will just say, look, I just can't afford to be in this. And other agents that are better at it are going to take those transactions away. Because you're correct. It's a zero-sum game in real estate. We can't manufacture more transactions. All we can do is get better at making sure we get to the consumer first.
No, I'm as being the number one placeholder for transaction and unit count. I think in 2023, we were 40% higher than number 2, right? So it is a number that a total value proposition, and just like it's a zero-sum game in transactions, it's a zero-sum game for productive agents, right? So we're always making sure that our value proposition is to be the most agent-centric company on the planet.
Yeah, that's it. So that is the fifth opportunity is about utilizing artificial intelligence and technology to become more efficient. There's a few others in the report there's one that I want to close with for this group. And I'd say everybody here should go to theopportunityreport.com, download a copy. It's free. It'll take you to our real estate news. Our media partner is distributing that report. So go to theopportunityreport.com. You can get it. It doesn't cost anything. There's no ads. We're not going to spam you. That's not what this is about. This is a report we produce to help the industry get better and to help you develop your business and become a better business person. So that's what it's for. And go pick up a copy and read. You read the whole thing. I'm going to give you one more, which I think is important in the context of EXP. Our ninth opportunity for agents, teams, and brokerages is about maximizing teams, about how teams, now you want to talk about revenue consolidation, sales volume consolidation. It's consolidated fastest amongst highly productive teams. Those are the if you take productive agents, it's great. You're consolidating sales volume. They're the ones that are going to win over the long term. Teams are that plus because they are working together to go after, to do things that individual agents, sometimes will struggle to do, where they're running marketing campaigns. They're spending more money on lead generation and business generation. They are better at converting leads because it's not, I know when I converted leads, if it was all coming to me, there's certain hours I can't answer the phone. There's certain hours I can't do things. But if I have a partner, eventually we built a lead generation function in our brokerage, then you can handle more volume. Right. And that's a key component, is leveraging teams as you build your business to partner up, to do things better, to have more capacity, to have specialization, to have people that you work with that just do one part of the real estate job so that they can do it really, really well and faster and better than other people. And I know EXP has been a company that has been enormously supportive of teams. And I would think in many ways was designed for teams. So that's an opportunity. It's very synergistic with your listeners, Leo.
No, I've been talking about the rise of the super team for 20 years, right? When I first got licensed in 2002, I remember the number one team in the country at my brokerage, which was KW, was like a couple hundred transactions, like 200 or 300. And when I was a solo agent, that seemed unfathomable. In 2010, I was the number one in the world at 603 transactions, and that put me at the top 5 of the Wall Street Journal across all brands. 603 wouldn't get me very high on the list today, right? No. I think I have 2 teams that'll crack 1,200 transactions this year. And then followed by like 950 and 850, and like our top 10, we'll have quite a few that are almost touching 1,000, right? Not just one, several. So one is, what's that very classic expression, what's old is new and what's new is old.
Yeah.
Right. I think the teams have gone to the value proposition of the brokerages of like the 50s and 60s. Mm-hmm. We're very much a platform that allows real estate entrepreneurs to build whatever size dream they want. That's how I categorize what we do. We're that operating system in the background. We make sure you get paid up fast. We give you the best tools, whether that's purely tech or training as well. And we allow you to build on top of that foundation so you don't have to go take out the liability and, the non-fun part of real estate, which is very in the forefront right now. But I agree. I think the rise of the super team will continue. That blend between the team ridge, right? It was a word. I'm not sure who we give credit for that one to, Jack, but somebody coined it. Now we all use it. But that indie brokerage that is really a team, we're the home of that, right? So a fun stat for you: out of our top 250 teams last year, if you were to add their individual transactions, those top 250 teams cracked 69,000 transactions. If they were a standalone brokerage, they would have been the 6th largest independent brokerage in the United States, right after Howard Henna last year.
Wow.
So with just 250 teams, right? So I agree with you. I think we're the home of the team. We have great solo practitioners, and we have great stories of solo practitioners becoming team leaders and growing to become very big teams here because of the tools and the training that are available to them.
Yeah, and it depends on what your passion is and what you're motivated by. Some people want to build a team because they like doing business with others and they like building something. Some people just love doing it their own way. And the good thing is, there's many options on the shelf as far as how to do that, both with EXP and in the industry generally. But teams in particular present a remarkable opportunity. I think in 10 years, the amount of consolidation we'll see in terms of sales volume it's already being driven by teams. I think it's going to be much more apparent. We're going to be talking about teams the same way that we talk about, some of the largest brokerages in the country, where they are very recognized. They're multi-state. They're supported by a platform like an EXP, and they're just using their size and their skill at doing things really well and at leveraging lead generation and conversion technology and their capabilities to continue to grow and dominate. So those are, but I'd say get the report. It's got all that in the first section, all for agents and brokers. There's a lot of other pieces in there that you may be able to use. The guidance that we have for people on this report, Leo, is this is a strategic report, meaning we're not teaching you how to run a Facebook ad or how to do the latest and greatest whatever. This is more of a report to help you think about the next 5 to 10 years of your career in the industry at whatever level you're at, and to understand what is likely to come. And what we recommend is take the report, read through the whole thing, and pick 2 or 3 things out of it. You say, that's an opportunity that I can really leverage. That's an opportunity that I can build into my business plan, or that I can invest in some way, whatever opportunity it is. And if you do that consistently each year, you pick 1 or 2 things that you're going to make improvements about in your business, and use the opportunity report as some guidance, that over the next 4 or 5 years, what we believe will happen is you'll get the benefit of being right about the direction that the industry is moving. And if you're right, if you're the prior report was 83% accurate. If this one's 83% accurate, and you pick 2 or 3 of the right things for you to do in your business, that you're going to build a much stronger practice, and you're going to be around in 5 to 10 years with a better, more robust business. And we saw it during the great financial crisis. Those that built during that downturn, took advantage of it, and invested in their business then, are the ones that came out on top, 5 to 7 to 10 years later. And EXP is a perfect example of one of the businesses that grew out of the great financial crisis into a massive, very capable company with a ton of agents and a ton of transactions being done every single year. So that's our advice on how to use it. Go back, pick a few things out of it, prioritize them, say, what am I going to work on in 2025 to build this into my business? How am I going to make myself stronger in this area so I can take advantage of these opportunities? And then do it again in 2026, do it again in 2027. Pretty soon you'll have something really great and to be proud of in your real estate practice.
No, that's exciting. Thank you for the energy and dedication to the industry, and for putting this out there so everyone can have this at their fingertips. And just like anything else, now people need to go put this into practice and into action. Execution
is always the hard part, and it's the part that's where winners are born. So we wrote it. Go take advantage of it. It's free. Get it at theopportunityreport.com. You can download it and make use of it right away. So, Leo, thank you so much for hosting me. I really have appreciated the time to spend with you and with all of our friends at EXP.
Thanks for coming on, Jack.
You bet.